Before we get into the video properly, I want to take a moment to let you know that this video will contain spoilers for the 2019 Blair Witch game, the 2021 game The Medium, as well as Silent Hill 2, both the 2001 original, but mostly the 2024 remake. More importantly, we will also be talking about trauma, PTSD, CPTSD, wartime trauma, police violence, childhood sexual abuse, physical abuse, and medical abuse. If any of these subjects will cause you distress, then maybe consider watching this video later or giving it a miss altogether. You need to look after yourself. No one will mind if you give this video a miss. Please, look after yourself. Now let's begin. This video is going to be one of the more personal videos that I end up creating for this channel. Now, to be clear, I do deem every video I make to be personal, as I pour parts of myself into each video that I create. So then, what do I mean when I say that this video will be one of the more personal ones that I make? It basically means that I'll be talking about something that I tend to keep rather close to my chest, and that's my complex post-traumatic stress disorder, otherwise known as CPTSD. I'm not going to be going into any real depth on the cause of this condition, other than right now, where I will share that I suffer from this condition due to sexual abuse during my early teenage years, and then again in my 20s. I do not wish, nor will I, disclose any more information than this, but I do believe that sharing that information with you is important for the context of this video. As somebody who deals with CPTSD and has most of my life, over half of it at this point, I believe that I have the experience necessary to share an informed opinion on how the subject of PTSD is dealt with within stories and narratives. Trauma and the stories that deal with it have become rather popular in recent years. From Smile to Backrooms, it's common for stories to tackle this subject. Maybe you could even say it's become trendy within the moment. So I want to narrow my view down to look at how one game studio has dealt with this subject matter here today. Because I think they started out really severely mishandling this delicate subject matter, but they have impressively improved within recent years. Who am I talking about? That would, of course, be Bloober Team. Now, Bloober Team, or Bloober, as I will simply be calling them from now on, are a Polish game development team, most well known for their horror games, but they have dabbled with other genres. They were founded in November of 2008, but it wasn't until 2010 that they released their first game. Now, this was a tie-in game for the History Channel for a show called Egypt, Engineering and Empire. It wasn't until 2016 that I personally became aware of them when they released the game Layers of Fear. This was an enjoyable but ultimately rather generic psychological horror game that relied too much on very predictable jump scares, at least in my opinion. It wasn't until 2019 that they released the first game that we'll be looking at today, and that's Blair Witch, Bloober's take on the classic cinematic found footage masterpiece, The Blair Witch Project. So then, without any further ado, let's do further. Blair Witch is set 2 years after the iconic film, The Blair Witch Project, with us playing as Ellis Lynch, a retired military veteran and police officer, searching the woods that were seen in that same film for a missing boy. Ellis suffers from PTSD from multiple incidents, the first of which occurred when he was a small boy and his friend went missing in those very same woods. This event caused Ellis to suffer from dissociative amnesia around the event. As an adult, Ellis joined the military after encouragement from his father. He went on to fight in the Gulf War, where his entire squad were ambushed and killed in front of him. He was the only survivor, fleeing into a nearby residence where he found a woman. To keep her from screaming and calling for help, he initially covered her mouth, but when that wasn't working, he ended up plunging his knife into her chest, killing her. This incident re-traumatized Ellis, which led to his discharge from the military. He ends up finding a job with the local sheriff's department of Burkittsville, the town around the woods from the film. During a call out for a burglary, Ellis suffered from a flashback that led to him shooting the unarmed burglar. This was a young man called Adam Shannon. This event only worsened Ellis's PTSD, which saw him being dismissed from the sheriff's department, deemed too unfit to work. It's worth pausing here just to mention that Ellis would almost certainly be suffering from CPTSD here, not PTSD. Now, I'm not a doctor, so take what I say with a grain of salt, but I do also have diagnosed CPTSD myself, so I'm not somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about here. PTSD occurs when a person suffers from a singular traumatic event, while CPTSD occurs when a person suffers from multiple or continuous traumatic events. Since Ellis suffered from his time in the Gulf War, which would have been a continuous event, as well as the two singular events with the shooting as a cop and his friend being abducted when he was a child, this would have almost certainly resulted in CPTSD. I understand that this is just a small detail, and it's not really one that ruins the story or plot of Blair Witch, but it is the beginning of us being able to see that Bloober don't fully understand the subject that they're writing about here. Sometime later, Sheriff Langin, Ellis's former boss, gives him an emotional support dog called Bullet to try and help with Ellis's PTSD, which has shown no signs of improvement. Now, Bullet does help Ellis, and with the dog's help, he's able to show some improvement. We begin the game at about this point in Ellis's life in 1996, with Ellis joining up with a search party for a missing boy, one Peter Shannon, the younger brother to the young man that Ellis accidentally shot during his time as a cop. It's obvious to everyone around him why Ellis wants to help with this search. It's a chance to make right the wrong that he did to the Shannon family. While Sheriff Langin is hesitant at first, he does relent when Ellis points out that Bullet will be able to track Peter's scent. Very quickly, Ellis and Bullet find Peter's baseball cap. Now, Bullet with the boy's scent leads Ellis deeper into the woods, with the pair finding an old campsite. It's here that Ellis finds an old camcorder, and by watching the tape, he learns that Peter was abducted by a man going by Carver. Ellis also learns that the tapes are able to manipulate time and space, and from here, Ellis begins to track Carver, experiencing several strange jumps in time, sometimes several hours forward, sometimes years forward. As Ellis and Bullet explore the woods, they learn that Carver is the puppet of the Blair Witch. After one of these jumps in time, you find Sheriff Langin's corpse buried in loose twigs and dead leaves. Nearby is a tape that shows Carver killing Langin. Eventually, it's revealed that the Blair Witch wants Ellis to be her next puppet, but he is resistant to this idea. This can be seen when Carver asks Ellis to shoot Bullet, and Ellis of course rejects the idea wholesale. This brings us to the multiple endings of this game. Now, these can be split up into different parts. You have the fate of Ellis himself, the fate of Peter, and the fate of Bullet. Peter's fate depends on whether or not you're able to open this bunker door early on in the game. If you do manage to open it, then you learn that Peter is already dead by the time that the game starts. If you fail to open it, then the boy's body is never found and his fate remains unknown. Bullet's fate depends on how you treat him during the game. If you're kind to him, petting him, giving him treats, telling him he's just the bestest boy in the whole world, because honestly he is. Every dog is the bestest dog. So if you pet him, give him lots of treats and protect him during the monster attacks, then he'll survive. If you're mean to him, scolding him for no reason, ignoring him, and just leaving him to fight off the monsters on his own, then he will unfortunately not make it out of the woods, dying at the end of the game. But what we're most interested in this video is Ellis's fate. And this is where we get to see the worst of Bloober's writing in terms of how they handle PTSD. If you attack the monsters with your flashlight, break the Blair Witch's idols, and obey the witch's commands during that final chapter of the game, then you get the bad ending for Ellis. This reveals to both you and him that Carver is a version of Ellis that has continued the cycle of violence. He's just an older version of Ellis, using the Blair Witch's powers to move through time. It was Ellis that kidnapped his own friend when he was a young boy. It was Ellis that killed Sheriff Langin, and it was Ellis that kidnapped and killed Peter. During the bad ending, the Ellis that we play as kills the older version of himself known as Carver and takes his place as the new puppet of the Blair Witch, continuing this cycle. If you avoid combat, you don't destroy the idols, and you resist the witch during that final chapter of the game, then you get the good ending. Within this good ending, Ellis allows Carver, who remember is himself, to kill him, meaning that the Blair Witch no longer has a puppet and the cycle of violence is broken. Okay, I cannot stress how bad this is. I fucking hell. To be clear on just what Bloober wrote here, the bad ending has Ellis surviving but becoming the abuser, abducting and killing 2 children and the sheriff, while the good ending has Ellis killing himself, breaking the cycle of violence. The good ending, the fucking good ending, the ending that Bloober see as good, has the person suffering from PTSD killing themselves so that they don't end up hurting those around them. What's the message here? What's the fucking takeaway? Oh my god. Whether intentional or not, and I fucking hope that it's not, the message is that those with PTSD are so toxic that the only way for them to avoid hurting those around them is to commit suicide. Bloober is advocating for those with PTSD to kill themselves. This is what this game is doing, and I fucking hate this. It's disgusting, it's vile, it's putrid, it's just fucking evil. Now I don't really think that Bloober believed this. After all, don't attribute to malice what can be attributed to stupidity. I think that Bloober's writers were trying to write something deep and trying to say something artsy, something meaningful, but they didn't fully understand what they were writing, and as such they accidentally wrote one of the most fucking harmful things I've seen in a game. But the years passed, and in 2021 Bloober released their next big horror game that once again dealt with themes of trauma and PTSD. So let's move on and let's dig into that next game and see if they learned any lessons from the mistakes they made in the Blair Witch. Right away, it's possible to see that the medium is Bloober putting their cards on the table and just admitting how much they want to make a Silent Hill game. Now, to be honest, that's a very admirable ambition. I know that I want to write something one day that reaches up to the caliber of Silent Hill 2. So, in a way, I guess I share that ambition with the Bloober of 2021. The trouble is that writing a story that deals with the subjects of child sexual abuse, generational trauma and PTSD isn't easy. If you succeed, then, well, you're the author of probably the next Silent Hill 2. But if you fail, then you've not just written a bad story, you've written an outright harmful one. Now, this is very much what happened with Bloober and their last game, the Blair Witch game. So, have they avoided making the same mistake twice? The medium tells the story of Thomas and his 2 daughters. While we play as Mary Ann, the story really begins during the Second World War with a 3-year-old Thomas. He's captured by the Nazis and experimented on, and it's during these experiments that he discovers that he's a medium, able to see the other side and communicate with spirits trapped between our real world and whatever comes after death. Eventually, the war ends and Poland is freed from the Nazis by the Red Army, and it becomes a Soviet state. Thomas manages to disappear during this time, ending up at the Neva Workers' Resort, where he has 2 daughters, Lily and Mary Ann. Both children inherit their father's abilities, but Thomas himself is hiding from the Soviets who, similar to the Nazis, want to learn more about his powers, and they don't want to do so in a very friendly way. So to avoid attention, he's stopped using any of his powers. Now, time passes, and Thomas works his way up through the positions within Neva and eventually becomes the manager of the resort, which allows him to invite his friend Richard to work at the Neva resort. And this is where things get kind of difficult to talk about. Richard ends up sexually assaulting Lily, who at the time is still a child. And this overwhelming trauma causes Lily's soul to fracture into two pieces, sadness and the more. These two pieces of Lily's fractured soul are still tethered to her, unable to act without her influence. Eventually, Thomas finds out about the abuse that occurred between Richard and Lily, and he ends up using his powers to gain a confession from Richard. After he's got that confession, he continues to use his powers just to punish Richard, just to hurt him for what he did to his daughter. And this act leads fellow psychic and Soviet agent Henry to Neva in order to track Thomas down. As a means of torturous interrogation, Henry ends up burning down Thomas's house with both Lily and Marianne trapped inside. The Moor offers Lily a deal. If she frees it from her control, then it will free both girls from the house fire. Seeing no other option, she accepts this deal and frees the Moor from its tether. This unleashes the Moor on the Neva resort. Meanwhile, while this is happening, Thomas manages to overpower Henry, killing him in the brawl. And just as he manages to get out to the house, he finds that both of his daughters have survived the fire, although Marianne has fallen into a coma from severe burns down her right side. The Moor, now free from Lily's control, carries out a rampage throughout Neva, possessing people and causing them to slaughter everyone around them. Marianne is taken to the hospital in the aftermath of this slaughter, where it's discovered that she has amnesia. Thomas decides it's best to leave her at the hospital so that he can focus on Lily in hopes of containing the Moor. Not knowing what else to do, Thomas locks Lily up in a room deep within a fallout bunker under Neva. This contains the Moor to the resort, but it doesn't stop it. The Moor still prowls the resort, looking for any souls that it is yet to devour. Years and years pass with Lily trapped under Neva with Thomas, while Marianne grows up outside of the resort. Eventually, Marianne becomes an adult, and one day she gets a phone call from Thomas telling her to come to Neva. Of course, not knowing what else to do, Marianne gets on her bike and heads towards the abandoned resort, where she discovers the truth behind her family's dark past. Now, the game ends with Marianne meeting up with Lily on a lakeside pier. Lily gives Marianne a gun and asks her to kill her, insisting that it's the only way to stop the Moor. Marianne pieces together that Lily is now too weak for the Moor to use as a vessel. It needs her body, Marianne's body, if it is to escape Neva. So, Marianne places the gun against her own head, but she hesitates. The screen fades to black as we hear a gunshot. We're left ultimately unsure if Mary shot herself or Lily. Okay, now we understand the story, so let's unpack this bullshit. Oh my god, once again we have a story from Bloober that implies that all of the bad things would end if the traumatized person just died. Lily and her trauma are the direct causes of the Neva massacre. Bloober have once again basically made a game where they imply that the person with PTSD should kill themselves in order to avoid hurting those around them. Whereas Ellis became Carver, Lily unleashes the Moor. I really cannot fucking stress how bad this is. Does Bloober really think that traumatized folk like myself are so toxic, so inherently harmful, that the only way to prevent us from hurting those innocent people around us is for us to be killed? Because they've made two games in a fucking row where that's the central fucking message. Okay. Let's take a moment to calm down here. Okay. Let's remember Hanlon's razor. Don't attribute to malice what can be attributed to ignorance. I think I understand what Bloober were going for with the medium. It's a combination of a type of generational trauma and an attempt to make Silent Hill without understanding what they were writing. Let's start with the generational trauma that they use. The type of generational trauma that Bloober are using here can be best summed up with the phrase, hurt people, meaning that those that have been hurt go on to hurt others through their own trauma. Now, this was something that personally scared the hell out of me for a long time. I was convinced that I was poisoned, toxic, cursed, only capable of hurting those around me. And due to this belief, I pushed everyone I loved away. But thanks to a very good therapist, I was able to see that this just isn't true. People hurt people. Now, sure, some of those people that hurt others will also have been hurt themselves, but that's not the reason why they hurt others. This cycle of pain just isn't really a thing in real life, but the idea of it sounds poetic, so it becomes a trope, a cliche, one that has now been used within hundreds of lazy stories. The other thing, the other reason that I think Bloober wrote this bullshit is because of Silent Hill. The girl that splits her soul into two pieces via a traumatic event is right out of the first Silent Hill game. The truth being revealed to the player character on the side of a lake is from Silent Hill 2. So much of the medium is just recycled Silent Hill content. So here's what I think happened. Bloober were massive Silent Hill fans, so they set out to make their own Silent Hill. This explains the fixed camera perspectives, as well as a lot of the items that we find. We find a radio that's very similar to the one from Silent Hill. We find a flashlight that's almost identical to the one from Silent Hill 2. But they also took the idea of a traumatic event splitting a girl's soul in two, and then turning the nearby area into a symbolic hell idea from Silent Hill 1. The player character having a dark past, but they've blocked it out. That idea came straight from Silent Hill 2. The player jumping between the real world and the other world via mirrors comes directly from Silent Hill Origins. The sexual abuse idea was taken from the first Silent Hill film. Generational trauma came from Silent Hill Homecoming. All of this got mixed up with the lazy abuse victim becomes abuser cliche, and the result of all of that was the medium. Bloober wanted to make a Silent Hill game, but they didn't understand the sensitivity and nuance that's required to tackle the subjects that Silent Hill does. And this led to them making 2 games in a row where they suggest that the victim of abuse, the person suffering from PTSD, is the direct cause of the evil in their stories, and therefore it would be best if this victim died in order to save everyone else from their trauma. So, what did Bloober do after these 2 awful games? First of all, they released a remaster of both Layers of Fear games, which deals with mental illness but not trauma directly. I may look at that game one day, but it's not relevant to our subject today. So what did they do after that? What was it? Oh, they remade Silent Hill 2. The game that's all about trauma and even includes a victim of childhood sexual abuse. Okay, fucking hell, how did they mess this one up then? Let's have a look. The Silent Hill 2 remake is exactly what it says it is. A remake of Silent Hill 2. I bring up its nature as a remake because if we're going to understand how Bloober have either stagnated or improved their writing, we're first going to need to untangle Bloober's writing from Team Silent's writing. Now, the most straightforward way to do this is to look at what Bloober have added to or removed from the original Silent Hill 2 and then judge them on these changes rather than the content that has remained the same between both versions of the game. To begin with, let's look at the basic story of Silent Hill 2, the version that's present within both the Team Silent original and the Bloober Team remake. You play as James Sunderland, a man who has been looking after his terminally ill wife for years and has very recently murdered her, smothering her to death within their home. The trauma of this event forces James into a delusional state where he is under the delusion that Mary passed away 3 years ago from her disease. The cosmic nature of Silent Hill summons James to it by sending him a letter addressed from Mary, telling him that she's waiting for him at their special place within the town. This is enough to cause James to travel to Silent Hill with Mary's body on the back seat of his car. He arrives just outside of Silent Hill, where we begin the game on this observation point. We then make our way down through the woods and into a graveyard where we meet Angela Oresco, a young woman who's looking for her mother. James makes his way out of the graveyard and into Silent Hill proper, and he traverses the many nightmares that the town manifests for him, each one based on his subconscious guilt, grief, and repressed sexuality. During his time within the Woodside apartment, James bumps into Eddie Dombrowski, a strange young man throwing up in a toilet mere meters away from a mutilated corpse in a fridge. Eventually, James finds Maria, a perfect doppelganger of Mary, only her hair, makeup, and clothes are different. Now, she is a manifestation created by Silent Hill that serves as both a temptation for James as well as a reminder of what he did and what he lost with Mary. This can be seen with how sexy Maria is in both her appearance and personality, but also in how the town keeps killing her. As James and Maria try to escape the otherworld version of Brookhaven Hospital, Pyramid Head ends up killing Maria. James then fights his way through the nightmare version of the town, Silent Hill's Historical Society, and the Toluca prison, eventually arriving at the otherworldly labyrinth. While trying to navigate this nightmarish maze, James then meets up with Eddie again, and after a brief verbal confrontation, Eddie attacks James, who then kills Eddie in self-defense. The act of having killed another human being jump-starts James's mind, as he starts to remember the truth of what he did to Mary. Now, a very nice detail added by Bloober here are James's hands shaking violently after he kills Eddie. If you've paid attention, we've seen this reaction from James before, right at the start of the game, in the bathroom at the observation point. It's a subtle signal to the player that James has killed another human before Eddie. This, of course, was Mary, who James killed very shortly before the start of the game. This is why James's hands were shaking in the bathroom, by the way. This is also a nice visual way to show James's trauma. An honestly really nice moment of show don't tell from Bloober. After this, James makes his way to the Lakeside Hotel so that he can confront the truth. Within the hotel, James meets up with Laura, a little girl who's also in town looking for Mary, and the two have a conversation. One which once again forces James to acknowledge the truth. Laura mentions that she was in the hospital with Mary last year, but James's delusion said that she died 3 years ago. That means that James must be wrong about Mary having died 3 years ago. This leads into James watching a VHS in room 312, which reveals the truth to him directly. Having watched himself kill Mary on the VHS, James finally accepts the truth of Mary's death along with his responsibility for having murdered her. This acceptance leads him into one of 4 endings in the original game and one of 6 endings in Bloober's remake. This is of course not counting the 2 joke endings. If we want to understand how Bloober handled James's trauma, then we're going to need to focus on the 2 new endings added by Bloober. Otherwise, we'd be judging Bloober based on Team Silent's writing, which just makes no sense. Let's look at those 2 endings, starting with the Bliss ending. Within this ending, James finds a bottle of White Claudia, an hallucinogenic drug, and he drinks it before watching the videotape in room 312 of the Lakeside Hotel. The tape will play as normal, but at the point where the video usually cuts off to reveal the truth of James murdering Mary, instead the tape continues, with James now promising to take Mary back to Silent Hill someday. The two then kiss as James picks up the camcorder and returns to his life with Mary in the past. We then jump back to the hotel in the present to find that James is gone, seemingly back in time to be with Mary again. To fully understand this ending, we have to understand what White Claudia is. This is a drug that possesses hallucinogenic properties. Some folk, particularly the cultists of the Order within Old Silent Hill, use this drug to weaken the barriers between the real world and the other world. This leaves two possible readings for this ending. Either James is hallucinating and has fully lost himself to the delusion of being back in time with Mary before everything went wrong, or he managed to use the White Claudia to actually jump back in time using the town's mysterious power. I think the reading that makes the most sense is the hallucination, as it ties in with the themes of James not being able to accept the truth of what he did to Mary. In this sense, the Bliss ending shares a lot in common with Team Silent's Maria ending. Both have James denying the truth and choosing to live within a comfortable delusion instead. The difference being that in one, namely the Maria ending, James makes a doomed attempt to move forward with Maria, whereas in the other, he uses drugs to stagnate in an ideal moment rather than even attempting to move forward at all. The other ending Bloober added is called Stillness, and the Stillness ending shares a lot in common with the In Water ending from Team Silent. Both have James drive his car into Toluca Lake to kill himself, but the tone of this suicide is different. In the In Water ending, James admits that he can't forgive himself for what he's done to Mary, before stating that he knows she wouldn't want him to kill himself, but it doesn't matter what she wants, because she's not there. He then looks at the body on the back seat and asks if she's there, but he gets no reply and so proceeds to drive his car into the lake. During the Stillness ending, James starts out the same way by admitting that he can't forgive himself for what he's done to Mary, but unlike the In Water ending, Mary now replies to him, attempting to calm him down. Instead of asking if she's there, he now asks if she'll wait for him, to which she replies that she already is. James then takes a moment to stare at the letter that brought him to Silent Hill in the first place, before sighing and ultimately driving his car into the lake. The In Water ending has James killing himself with a rational and clear mind. He's freed himself from his delusions, both that of Mary having died naturally 3 years ago and of her ever returning to him. This is a clarity that James finds himself unable to live with, and so he ends his own life to escape into nothingness. During the Stillness ending, he's still delusional, hence the presence of Mary within the car with him. While James's suicide within this ending feels calmer, it's far less rational as James is very much delusional. Whereas his original delusion was based around his innocence in terms of Mary's death, now his delusion has reformed around the idea of getting to be with Mary again. Wrapped up within this fantasy, James asks his hallucination if she'll wait for him, and when she replies in the positive, as she obviously would, he accepts this and kills himself so that he can be reunited with Mary. Both of Bloober's new endings have James falling into a new delusion, having ultimately not been strong enough to both accept the truth and his guilt within that truth. During one of these endings, he uses drugs to stagnate within an idealized version of the past, and within the other he accepts death under the delusional idea that he'll be reunited with Mary in an afterlife. So, now that we understand James's trauma, I want to look at the other two major characters within this story, Eddie and Angela. Let's start with Eddie. Eddie's school life was hell, with him being relentlessly bullied for his intelligence and his weight. This built up a lot of resentment within Eddie. Years after Eddie has left school, he gains access to his father's gun and seeks out his bully. Aiming for revenge, he shoots the boy's dog dead before shooting the bully himself in the knee, destroying his future as a professional football player. Eddie then panics and flees to Silent Hill. While we never get any confirmation of what Eddie's version of Silent Hill is like, we can piece some stuff together. His version of the nightmare seems to be freezing cold, a detail that Bloober doubled down on. This can be seen in the way that Bloober's added Eddie's visible breath within each scene that he's in, showing us that while Silent Hill is a reasonable temperature for James, it's freezing for Eddie. We can also piece together that the town seems to be tormenting Eddie by manifesting his bully over and over. The first body we find near Eddie in the Woodside apartment seems to be this very bully. which we can figure out thanks to the football posters and pieces of memorabilia within the flat that we find both the body and Eddie in. And despite what Eddie says, he very much killed this person. Later on, within the Toluca prison, we find Eddie again, who seems to have lost a bit of his grip on reality. We also find him with another body, one that looks very similar to that first one we found in the fridge. It's worth noting that within Bloober's remake, this body in the prison is frozen, which ties in with Eddie's cold breath. Our final confrontation with Eddie occurs during the labyrinth section. Here Eddie has completely lost it. He screams at numerous corpses around him. The first thing he says is,
"Couldn't leave well enough alone, huh? You just had to follow me all the way out here."
This reinforces the idea that the people Eddie has been killing are manifestations of his bully. We get more confirmation of this fact, that everyone he kills has been a manifestation of their very same person with the next line he speaks, which is,
"How many times do I have to kill you?"
This outburst leads into Eddie attacking James and then being killed by James in self-defense, ending Eddie's story within Silent Hill 2. We can see some of Bloober's old traits here, namely the victim of abuse becoming an abuser. But with Eddie, it's different for two main reasons. Firstly, this plot point isn't Bloober's plot point. It was taken from Team Silent's original Silent Hill 2. Secondly, unlike Ellis becoming Carver or Lily unleashing the Maw, Eddie's violence is fully intentional. He wants to and is fully committed to the violent actions that he carries out.
"Yeah, I ran away after I killed that dog. But you know what? It was fun!"
Even before Eddie made it to Silent Hill, he confronted his bully, murdered the boy's dog, and then ruined the boy's life, all on purpose. While Eddie is afraid of the consequences of his outburst, he in no way regrets the actions. I'm not saying the bully wasn't in the wrong because, well, he obviously fucking was. Anyone who's been bullied can tell you that bullies are dickheads. But Eddie was easily just as bad, if not worse, than his bully in the end. Eddie is very much an abuser, not because of his trauma, he's just an abuser that happened to be bullied. Both James and Angela were unable to leave their situations, which led to their acts of violence, however right or wrong you believe they are. Eddie was the only one out of the trio who willingly pursued his act of violence. He could have simply moved on with his life. He's 23 years old, he's left school, he could have left his asshole bully in the past like most of us did. But Eddie didn't do this. He chose to get revenge as soon as he felt he had the means. Now this separates him from both Angela and James, but also Bloober's other trauma victims, Ellis and Lily. Moving on from Eddie, we get to the last character we'll be talking about today, and that's Angela. And she is easily, at least in my opinion, the most tragic character in Silent Hill 2. That may be because I identify more with her trauma than either that of Eddie's or James's. Angela was the victim to her father's physical, verbal, emotional, and, most horribly, sexual abuse since she was a young girl. Her brother may have also joined in on this abuse as well. Angela's mother wasn't really a safe place for the girl either, as she degraded Angela for this abuse, blaming Angela herself for the abuse that she suffered. At some point, Angela's mum left the family, leaving Angela alone with her two abusers. The abuse only stopped when she snapped and killed her father during one of his attempts to be with her. The trauma from killing her father causes her to float around in a cloud of dissociation, making her feel very childlike to those that she interacts with. After James talks to Angela outside of Silent Hill within the graveyard, we learn that she's come to Silent Hill looking for her mother. James next talks to Angela within the Blue Creek apartments, where we find her with a knife. James assumes that she's using this knife to self-harm, possibly to plan to even kill herself. I think that this was definitely the intention of Team Silent in the original Silent Hill 2. I think that we have some evidence to suggest that Bloober has changed this. I say this due to the item that we find after Angela hands over the knife and flees the room. In the original Silent Hill 2, we find the prisoner coin. This could be hinting at Angela's past trapped within an abusive household. In the Silent Hill 2 remake, after Angela hands over that knife, we instead find the key of resilience. This key gives us much more of a hopeful impression towards Angela than we got in the original game. The remake also makes a point telling Angela and the knife with resilience instead of suicide, and I really like this change. Our next meeting with Angela is one that's entirely new to the remake, and it occurs after we leave the hospital, as we're on our way to dig up the key to the Silent Hill Historical Society. James finds Angela within Rosewater Park. At first, their conversation seems to be going okay until a noise behind James distracts Angela, at which point she seems to spot something that we, the audience, nor James can see. She then talks more to this unseen presence than to James himself, saying,
Angela?
No. Please. You shouldn't be here.
James tries to reassure Angela, but she reacts violently as James touches her, shouting at him not to touch her before ultimately running off. I think it's very likely that what Angela saw behind James was her father. The town manifested him for her in the same way that it manifested Maria for James and Eddie's bully for him. This would explain her reaction perfectly. This manifestation of Angela's father stalking her reaches its conclusion during the next meeting between her and James within the otherworldly labyrinth. James finds Angela being terrorized by a nightmarish monster known as the Abstract Daddy. This monster is a manifestation of Angela's father sexually assaulting her. It's rather literally an abstract depiction of rape. Bloober kept the original design pretty much identical to the Team Silent original, but they did add in a chase sequence before the actual boss fight where we must escape from the Abstract Daddy while smashing up 3 TVs. This new section gives us more of an insight into Angela's abusive life with her father before the start of the game. And none of this is pleasant. During this section, we learn that she often hid from her father's abuse within a closet. This can be inferred by the fact that we see Angela hiding inside a closet during the early part of the chase, and then we have to hide in a similar closet later on in the chase. After this, we confront the Abstract Daddy and manage to put it down for good, recreating the moment that Angela killed her dad in self-defense. Angela's reaction after this boss fight is very telling as well. She proceeds to kick the ever-loving shit out of the Abstract Daddy's corpse before smashing a TV over its head for good measure. When James tries to calm her down, she responds with a prompt and clear as hell,
Don't order me around!
She's had enough of being told what to do, particularly by men. This is reinforced when James tries to calm her down further, with Angela accusing him of only trying to manipulate her into sex.
It's always the same with you. You're only after one thing.
James, of course, rejects this idea, but Angela is insistent, adding that James could just force her like her father used to do.
Or you could just force me. Like he always did.
At this confession of what she's been through, Angela breaks down, bursts into tears and drops to the floor. Now, it's not clear if her next line is directed at James, the Abstract Daddy, or both of them, but she calls somebody a disgusting pig, adding that they make her sick. This is a very clear example of Angela's distrust around men. James insists that he only wants to find his wife Mary, which prompts Angela to accuse James of not wanting Mary around after a while, of him having cheated on her, which causes James to shout at her.
You probably found someone else.
No!
As James shouts no at Angela, she regresses into her more childlike manner of speech before fleeing the room.
I need to find my mama.
Our next interaction with Angela is our last one, and it occurs right before the final 2 bosses of the game within the otherworld version of the Lakeside Hotel. We find Angela on a burning flight of stairs from the basement to the first floor of the hotel. At first, she mistakes James for her mother, but she very quickly realizes who we actually are. I've heard others, both on and offline, who have read this scene as an allegory for Angela's desire to, or outright plans to, commit suicide in order to escape from her trauma. I'm not here to say that reading is wrong. All art is ultimately subjective to the viewer's own reading. Therefore, no reading can be wrong as long as it is genuinely held. This goes even more when the art is abstract, which Silent Hill 2 very much is. But, with that having been said, I do not read this scene this way at all. I see Angela in this scene as having made an important understanding about her trauma, about her CPTSD. As she outright tells James here, for her, the town is always like this.
It's hot as hell in here.
You see it too? For me, it's always like this.
Always in flames. But notice how, unlike James, she's not standing next to the flames. She's outright engulfed by them. CPTSD isn't a condition that you can cure or really ever get away from. Angela will always have to deal with this fire. She can't escape it. Her brain has literally been permanently rewired by her prolonged trauma. This doesn't mean that you can't learn to live around the flames though. They are hot as hell, they are scary, but they can't burn you. As much as this trauma can feel immediate during night terrors, flashbacks and moments of being triggered, it is confined to the past, and you need to learn that. And that's not easy, it's hard, it's painful, and it's nearly impossible to do on your own. I, myself, have had help from an amazing therapist, medication that has helped me a lot, and of course my fantastic wife during my own journey through learning to live with my CPTSD. With all of their help, I have, like Angela, learned that while I can't extinguish the flames or escape from them, that they can't burn me. So I've learned to be less afraid of them. I've learned to live with them. I don't think Angela is going to kill herself here. I think she's going to remain in Silent Hill and live alongside the flames. You could argue that she asked for the knife back from James to kill herself, but I would disagree with that as well. While it is very subtle in the original game, one of the changes that Bloober made that I actually really like are the changes to the newspaper article that you find outside of the room with the abstract daddy boss fight. The original article mentions that Angela's dad was killed, but the Bloober remake adds the information about the murder weapon, which turns out to be the knife that Angela gave to James back in the Blue Creek apartments. I think that she wants the knife back because she sees it as an item of protection, of power. It was, after all, literally the thing that she used to free herself from her abuser. Do you remember the key of resilience that we found when we first got this knife from Angela? I think that only adds more evidence to this idea of the knife being an item that Angela sees as powerful, responsible for her escape from her abusive family. It's her key of resilience. What I like about this is that Bloober for once actually put distance between the trauma victim and suicide with these updates to the newspaper article and the key of resilience. I think that Bloober have actually improved Angela from her depiction within the original Silent Hill 2, and after the Blair Witch game and the medium, that was the last thing I expected. I genuinely think that what we've seen here within the Silent Hill 2 remake is Bloober finally having learned how to write stories about trauma without implying that the victims of abuse should kill themselves. I know that's a bloody low bar, but damn, it took them 2 whole games to get there. Still, the end result with the Silent Hill 2 remake is genuinely impressive to see. While I don't think the remake is perfect, just check out my previous video where I compare it to the Resident Evil 2 remake to hear my complaints about it, I do think that Bloober wrote something that feels really important to me. This remake has firmly sealed itself as one of my favourite games of all time, just because of how well I think it deals with the themes of trauma, child abuse, and CPTSD. I can't believe it, but Bloober really did improve. Angela's story in particular is better in the remake than it is in the original. Comparing Angela's story to Lily's story is just night and day. It's black and white. I put off playing the Silent Hill 2 remake for 2 years because I was worried that Bloober would ruin this beautiful story. This story that is more than just a video game to me, that is genuinely important and has been important through my personal journey of learning to live with CPTSD. The Silent Hill 2 remake is a difficult game, one that deals with subjects that most really shouldn't tackle, but it does so with a level of nuance, care and understanding that really elevates it above most other stories. This is more than just a game for me. This remake has taken a place that the original Silent Hill 2 now shares with its remake. One that helps me during the times when my trauma rises to the surface and the flames around me become harder to ignore. I feel seen and understood by this game. And after both the Blair Witch and the Medium made me feel pretty much the opposite of that, I'm happy to have seen Bloober redeem themselves. I wasn't meant to get emotional recording this. The last thing I want to mention before I sign off is Bloober's next project, which is a remake of the first Silent Hill. Similar to Silent Hill 2, the first game deals with some very sensitive subjects, particularly parental abuse. Before I played the Silent Hill 2 remake, I would have never trusted Bloober with this, but after having played the Silent Hill 2 remake, I'm honestly rather confident that they can handle it. I will be honest and say that I am a little worried that the Silent Hill 2 remake was a random fluke and the Silent Hill 1 remake will be more of the disgusting, harmful bullshit from their earlier games. But I'm trying to keep an optimistic outlook. I will be sure to make a follow-up video when the Silent Hill 1 remake launches. So if you're interested in that, please subscribe. Now, I'm going to say goodbye, but before I do, I just want to ask if you're all okay. We've dealt with some pretty harsh topics in this video, stuff that I know can certainly trigger me when I'm feeling a little more sensitive than normal. So just make sure you're okay, make yourself a nice cup of tea, get yourself a snack and maybe put on something light after this. You know, a comfort film or a YouTuber that always makes you feel at home or something like that. If you're the sort of person who enjoys them, find a stuffy and give it a good cuddle. I'm going to go do just that actually, because I know for sure I need some time to decompress after recording this, and I just want to make sure that you also remember to look after yourself as well. Thank you very much for watching. I will catch you on the next video, which is going to have a collab in it. I'm doing my first ever collab, so that's going to be fun. But yeah, go look after yourself, get yourself a nice cup of tea, cuddle your favourite stuffy, and have a snack. In a while, crocodile.